Hey, what is up guys? MKBHD here, and this is the third phone from OnePlus. It's the OnePlus 3. It's a new phone from a not so new anymore company. So OnePlus has made their name from their previous two phones, the OnePlus 1 and the OnePlus 2, and both were really well known for their impressive specs for a low price. Big specs, small price. That's what OnePlus does best, and they are absolutely back at it again with this OnePlus 3. So just to get them out the way, this OnePlus 3 is rocking a Snapdragon 820 chip, the Adreno 530 GPU, 64 gigs of non-expandable flash storage, and 6 gigs of RAM. 6 gigabytes of RAM. Obviously they're flexing a little bit here, but we'll get to that in a bit. So I think the design is one of this phone's best assets this year. It's pretty clean all around. It's a full unibody metal jacket, as you can see, clean lines and subtle curves to feel good in the hand, and quality button placement, so they're all easily recognizable and easy to press. And it actually keeps that alert slider too from last year that I liked. I still wish I could reverse the order of the alert slider in the settings to make going down the silent switch, but whatever, it's still there. But overall, yeah, it's a simple, low-risk design. OnePlus didn't take any huge gambles with the outside of this phone because that's not really what they do. If you look at this phone, you don't really see anything design-wise that hasn't showed up in another smartphone before it. So they didn't take away the headphone jack or anything. They didn't go with dual cameras or detachable modules or magnets or pins. It's really much closer to, I guess, a traditional look. It even looks a little bit like the iPhone 6s on the bottom, you could say, with some slightly different angles and some different looking chamfers and ports. I'd say the worst thing about this design is probably the camera bump on the back, which is definitely brand new because I used to praise OnePlus for filling out the smartphone body with battery. Dear every smartphone manufacturer ever, if you're using a large camera module, which you probably are, feel free to fill out the rest of the phone's body with battery, like this. It will not make the phone too heavy or too thick, and everyone will appreciate the extra battery. Thank you. Now we get the OnePlus 3 that is way thinner, has a camera bump, and has a smaller battery. Anyway, up front on this phone is classic OnePlus here, a 1080p display, and your choice between capacitive buttons or on-screen buttons thanks to Oxygen OS. I happen to prefer the capacitive ones this time around. And the display is, again, really good for a 1080p display. It's not going to match the Quad HD panels from Samsung in sharpness or brightness, but those are the best panels on the market, and this little guy puts up a respectable fight. It's a 5.5-inch OLED display with some really thin side bezels, less than a millimeter on each side. I liked that. And it gets pretty bright, so it's viewable outdoors, and of course, it's battery efficient by definition. Now, no, the irony of launching a 1080p phone with the VR event did not go unnoticed, but OnePlus actually just kind of says, yeah, people don't really do the whole smartphone in headset thing very often, so 1080p is just fine. And I tend to agree with them on that. Plus, these high-end chips inside are so used to powering these big Quad HD panels that you pretty much eliminate any graphics slowdowns with the Adreno 530 just pushing 1080p. Things are super smooth, battery gets a nice benefit, and most people don't know the difference if they never hold it up next to a Galaxy S7. The display looks really good. The fingerprint reader is also much improved. It seems to be now, to me, the second fastest fingerprint reader I've ever used in a smartphone, right up next to Touch ID on the new iPhones. I would really only sometimes have it forget my finger once in a while, but that was rare, so I love being able to secure my phone really quickly, but still unlock my phone super fast. Fingerprint reader was a nice touch to see it improved. And actually using this phone is the best part of it, in my opinion. Again, it's not really that risky at all. It's Oxygen OS 3.1.1, based on Android Marshmallow, as you'd expect from OnePlus, and it has that stockish Nexus feel, plus a bunch of extra usability features stuffed in there for a better experience. Nothing crazy, not a huge skin or a bunch of new icons or bloatware or anything like that, but more like pure Android plus a bunch of neat customization features that are awesome if you want to use them, but they stay out of the way if you don't. You can definitely tell Oxygen OS has gotten a lot of fine-tuning and polish since the last version, especially on the OnePlus 2, so that's nice to see. And I usually go straight for the Google launcher on most new smartphones, but I like that home screen customization here is now super easy. So with a long press, you can now mess around with what type of Google search bar you have, home screen grid size, etc. And even the shelf is back and a bit better than before. I still don't use it much to the left of all your home screens, but now you can add memos or pin frequent contacts, reminders, stuff like that. It holds an auto-refreshing weather widget now, which is cool. I still think Google Now cards are way more useful though. I kind of just wonder if they could have built in a page like that, but I guess I'll have to settle with a widget or eventually using the Google Launcher anyway. But either way, as you would probably expect, with these top-notch specs, a 1080p display, and near stock Android, and fast flash storage, and a just absurd 6 gigabytes of RAM, this very well may be the smoothest, quickest Android handset I've ever used, alongside Nexus 6P right now. I'm just hoping it lasts. So some phones start off smooth, but then they find a way to stutter and chop, even with high-end specs, because of their software or their bloat. I've been using this phone for a couple of weeks now, and it's held up just fine. I don't think I ever got over 4 gigabytes of active RAM usage during my regular use, even with a game in the background. And I don't know if app reload times even matter after a certain point, because the ones that were cleared from RAM opened up fast again anyway. Battery life through all of this was also pretty good, although I think I kind of expected a little better. It was inconsistent at first, but then it leveled out. I would give it a B+, sort of good rating with a 3000 milliamp hour battery and a 1080p display. So I was consistently getting near 4 hours of screen on time with my usage. I gotta wonder though what they could have done if they didn't make the phone so thin. I mean, 7.3 millimeters in a full metal jacket. It's sexy and everything, but I gotta wonder how it would have lasted if they followed their own example from last year and made it a little thicker with like a 3600 milliamp hour battery or something, but oh well. Now, one of the headlining features of this phone is actually their fast charging, which they call dash charging. You actually get a 4 amp charger in the box, which sounds crazy because most smartphones are 1 or 2 amp chargers, and it charged so fast it actually changed my charging habits. This phone and the Galaxy S7 are actually the only phones I stopped charging overnight and just started topping them off whenever they were low, like in the morning when I wake up. I mean, you can still charge every night if you want to, but when you plug in and get 60% charge in half an hour, you kind of stop needing to. So dash charging is apparently much more efficient with temperature regulation, which is why the brick is a little bigger, but it'll keep pumping the current even when the phone is on and the screen is on, and when you're using it, where that's where most other phones will slow down their quick charge. There is no wireless charging since it's a metal back, but I am happy with the convenience of fast charging this guy, just like I am with the Galaxy S7. The camera on the OnePlus 3 has, you guessed it, no big gambles, but just a solid bunch of choices that put it together. It's a 16 megapixel Sony sensor, f2.0 aperture, has optical image stabilization, and phase detection autofocus for the quickness. The camera app itself is decently fast, both to open up and take a picture, so that's good. And by default, auto HDR is enabled, so it doesn't take that much extra time to actually take and process that shot, so that's nice. Focus is nice and quick, but of course you can turn off HDR to speed it up a little more if you know you're not going to need that. But the photos it takes are, I would say, fairly well balanced. They're sort of tiptoeing a line between being vibrant but not too oversaturated, and I'd say crisp without being super over sharpened. Again, you can tell there's definitely sharpening, but it's not too crazy. Exposure, I'd say it likes to overexpose just a little bit, like a lot of other smartphone cameras, but that's fine because dynamic range is actually really good. And this is all really nice to see from a smartphone that costs way less than the top dogs. Usually you see the camera quality dropping off as one of the big sacrifices in smartphones that drop the price a lot. This is one of the areas where the OnePlus 3 held up that really makes it worth the while. This is awesome. I think the mark of a good camera is one that lets you just snap a picture and then put it away and forget about it, and it's an amazing picture. And that actually kind of happened to me. So I was up on campus in a sort of a low light scenario. I was going to go meet some people to play Frolf, and I just looked around and I said, hey, this is like a nice low light camera test sort of environment. So I took a disc out, snapped a photo of it, and then put it away, and then we went and played Frolf. Of course, I come back to my computer a couple hours later, and it's uploaded to Google Photos, and I take a look at it, and I realize, like, that's nice. Like, that's a really good low-light photo. This was the first shot I took, and I didn't even think about taking another one. I just opened the app, snapped it, put it away, and went on with the day, and it looks pretty clean. So it performed pretty admirably in low light in auto. Obviously, moving objects are still going to be a blur, but the camera also has full manual mode if you want to get fancy with it. It has that and raw photos, and to top it off, 4K video with stabilization. So it's a complete smartphone camera package. And that actually kind of summarizes the OnePlus 3, you know? It's, despite being so simple, really is still the complete package. It doesn't have any huge, big gimmicks or risks that may or may not be worth the money, like trying to be modular or something like that. But it also isn't like having any glaring omissions or missing sensors or missing NFC. like maybe it did last year. You could even say it's boring, but you know, there's a couple first-party OnePlus material cases, so you can check those out if you want the sandstone back, of course. Or there's D-brand skins if you want even more looks. This, for example, is the concrete look. You could say it's groundbreaking. I'll link them below. But it comes down to this. My 5 pillars for a great smartphone are still great performance, display, battery life, camera, and build quality. And it pretty much nails all of those again. I've said it before, smartphones in the last couple of years are getting so good that we tend to measure them by what's wrong with them instead of what's right about them. And this applies again where the worst thing about the OnePlus 3 is that it's so damn clean. It's just almost boring, almost unexciting when you see other smartphones actually trying to be, you know, modular or having these removable parts or magnets and pins, or showing up with these fancy dual camera systems, or trying to be shatterproof. All those things are cool, but OnePlus isn't trying to do any of that. They're just showing up, crushing the spec game, and selling it for less than the phone that you were thinking about buying. I mean, 6 gigs of RAM. I think you want that. So that's the story for this phone. It's a pretty clean experience. I'd say it's a green light to buy if you're coming from a previous like 1 or 2 year old stock Android phone like a Nexus 5X or a OnePlus One or a Nexus 5. This is an awesome upgrade. And even just compared to other things in the price range, the experience is top notch. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching this video review. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.